Great, thanks. I'm Lily Tsai. I teach comparative politics in the department. I've taught here for the last 11 years, since I was 29. It was my first job out of grad school, and I'm delighted to be asked to talk about what is unique about doing research on political science in our department. It's a subject that I feel quite passionately about, and when I want to get really serious and in-depth about this subject, there's this video that I tell people to go and watch. So hopefully it will get queued up in a minute. I can't show the whole thing here, but partly because, as some of you may know, there are some parts that are not appropriate for polite company. But for those of you who haven't seen it before, I would like to show the first 30 or 40 seconds because I think it's really important for making some key points.
So, Ignatius, you wanted to talk to me about pursuing a PhD in political science? Yes, Professor. I'm very interested in politics. Do you know that as a political scientist, you will spend very little time thinking about actual politics? Instead, you will be doing math all the time. Math that you do not understand and never will. Do you like math? I'm very interested in politics. Perhaps then you should pursue a career in politics. I'm too socially awkward. I would rather be a professor of politics. Then presidents and senators will seek my advice. No president or senator cares what political scientists think. We are totally irrelevant, but I'm good at school. I have important things to say.
Thanks. So all of you are laughing because there's no truth to this video whatsoever, right? I mean, I should also add that over 300,000 views have been made to this video on YouTube. I encourage you all to go watch the rest of it. But I mean, I guess the first thing I want to say is that there are some people who don't find this funny at all. And I think what's unique about our department is that we can laugh about this video because we do spend a lot of time, as we've all been talking about, we do spend a lot of time actually thinking about politics. We do a lot of math, and we do a really good job of training students in a variety of cutting-edge methodologies, both quantitative and qualitative. But our department really is unique because we really don't compromise on either relevance to real-world policy and politics, or on being as theoretically and empirically rigorous as possible. Furthermore, our faculty, our students, and our graduates actually are pretty good at getting presidents and decision makers around the world to care about what our research says. So today I want to talk about one initiative that I'm working on that tries to live up to these ideals of the department and those of MIT more broadly. So 2 years ago, I started something of an experimental, that is to say, pilot research group called the MIT Governance Lab, or as the students have come to call it, the MIT Gov Lab. So GovLab has become a group of political scientists, faculty, and students focusing on innovation in citizen engagement and government responsiveness. So let me first say a few words about some of our core motivations. First, we aim to bring the practice and theory of politics together in the way we do research. We do research that contributes both to theoretical knowledge in political science and to operationally useful information for practitioners and policymakers in the real world. This sounds like it should be a given, but it's actually taken me 11 years to figure out how to put the two together without compromising on either side. So for 11 years, I thought of academic research as kind of my day job, and engaging with real-world practitioners was something I did kind of as an extracurricular activity. But when you can put the two together, there can be enormous payoffs on all sides. Real-world practitioners often know the most about why things work the way they do. Academic scholars can bring a broader perspective and hopefully provide knowledge so that the wheel doesn't keep getting reinvented. And then there's the potential for graduate students to access a ton of resources, networks, and field experience for their own education and research by engaging in collaborative research with practitioners. So a second motivation is to bring theory and practice together, not just in the research, but in the actual people. So a second core motivation for GovLab is to study political and social innovations as systematically as people at MIT, scientists at MIT study technological innovations, and to participate actively in building a community of like-minded scholars and practitioners. Again, that sounds like it should be a given. Places like Google employ plenty of engineers who are theoretically informed and empirically rigorous. But in the space where I work, it's not for granted that the practitioners that we work with that are working on citizen engagement and government accountability are learning oriented. Third, a key motivation in terms of real-world impact is simply to figure out how to get better government, especially for those who need it most. A lot of our focus is on contexts and populations where poverty and development are big problems. But as we all know, poverty and development are not just economic problems, they're political problems. And as political scientists, political problems are, of course, our specialty. So how do we do this? What's our approach to research? So like our colleagues in engineering and science, we seek to develop sustained relationships and integrated collaborations with practitioners. So in our case, these are social enterprises, NGOs, civil society organizations around the world, and government officials. They come to us when they want to understand what kinds of theories and research are out there already that can help them design better programs to encourage citizen participation and government accountability. Our iterative approach to research follows in the footsteps of Kurt Lewin, who was a professor at MIT in the 1940s. Kurt Lewin was the one who coined the term action research, or research, as he says, that uses a spiral of steps, each of which is composed of a circle of planning, social action, and fact-finding or research about the results of that social action. But it's equally non-negotiable that the research questions we investigate also contribute to theory building in political science. This dual commitment to building theory and informing practice is essential because one of GovLab's primary motivations is to contribute to graduate student research and education. So in the GovLab collaborative research projects with practitioners, students act essentially as co-investigators or co-PIs on field research projects. So they get a chance to apply the theories and methods they're learning in their substantive classes to actually designing and implementing a project in the field to test out some of their hypotheses. So let me give you an example of one of the theoretically important questions on which we are working. As we speak, actually, 3 of the students in GovLab are out in the field today, 2 of them in Tanzania, 1 in the Philippines. We have a researcher going to Tanzania tomorrow and one who's just come back. These researchers are working on projects that examine a particular question that GovLab has been focusing on. This question is motivated by our mission to help inform, perhaps even form a new research agenda on comparative political behavior. Now, as some of you will know, in some areas of political science, like American politics, there's a lot of research that bridges theory and public policy. Research on political behavior in the United States, there's a lot of research that has a lot of good theoretical and empirical work on what makes citizens and politicians behave the way they do in ways that enable better democratic representation. In the rest of the world, outside the US and Europe, we don't have such well-developed theories about this. We don't have theories about when people would ever take political action about, in places where they don't have protection of individual rights, or they don't have an established multi-party system, or free and fair elections. And we don't know why people would ever begin to trust and cooperate with governments in places where corruption, poor performance, or even violence against citizens has been sponsored by the government for decades. So to figure out the answers to some of these questions and to start to build theories about political behavior under risk and uncertainty, GovLab seeks to integrate new approaches from a variety of disciplines, political science, political economy, but also social psychology, sociology, and anthropology. So one theoretical gap which we're trying to fill is on understanding the role of local elites in citizen engagement and government accountability. Millions of dollars have been spent on interventions that try to motivate citizens to pressure their governments for better performance in public services. A lot of this is wasted because ordinary people often just don't know how to be effective. They don't have the information they need to figure out how to access the right decision makers. They don't know how to participate effectively. So, we've honed in on this question of, the leaders and elites in the communities that people live in that can act as intermediaries or gatekeepers to the people in power. So over the last year, we've designed a number of projects to investigate the key role of community leaders in a variety of contexts. So for example, last year in Liberia, during the Ebola crisis, we were, as far as we know, the only political scientists to conduct an in-person survey of citizen needs, attitudes, and behavior during the crisis itself, thanks to the longstanding relationship between one of the GovLab students, Ben Morse, and an NGO based in Liberia. So based on this research, we find that number one, the Ebola crisis was a crisis of political trust in the government just as much as it was a public health crisis. But that number two, when the government was able to work with the right community leaders, they were able to overcome this crisis of trust. We're doing similar projects that investigate the role of community leaders in Tanzania and the Philippines, again, as we speak. I am out of time, so I won't speak at length about those, but in each of these projects, a student has been the co-PI and has taken a lead role not just in the implementation of data collection and analysis, but in working actively with practitioners to formulate and decide on the main research questions and hypotheses themselves. In addition, after doing a non-trivial amount of exploratory fieldwork to figure out what the really interesting and important questions are for a particular context. So these are the kinds of approaches to research that I think make doing political science at MIT unique. We really don't compromise on either relevance or rigor. So to close, let's just watch a few more seconds of our hopeful PhD student from the video. I have to start it.
So, Ignatius, you wanted to talk to me about
sorry.
pursuing a PhD.
Sorry. Let me cue up. Oh no. Thank you.
I will come up with big important findings about politics that will get me a dream job at Harvard. Harvard only hires super smart humanoid robots created in a lab at MIT.
So, and I'm sure if Archon Fung were still here, he would attest to the fact that he is, in fact, a humanoid robot created here at MIT. But anyway, so I genuinely do not think that there's another political science department out there that really doesn't compromise on either relevance or rigor. And that's why when we watch this video with the really sad student and the really sad professor, we at MIT get the last laugh. Thank you very much.